Hello and welcome to another Bodgit and Leggit video. Today what we're going to do is how to find a parasitic drawer. Now what this means is if you leave your car for a couple of days, try and start it and there's nothing, the battery is drained because there's something in the car that's draining the battery. We're not going to go really into what is draining the battery because it could just be loads of things. We're going to show you how to find a drawer and then kind of how to eliminate things. There's a few ways of doing this. If you've got the older vehicles, like for example the Citroen CX we do, and also the Mercedes we started the other day on the live stream. That type of car, you can use the good old test light to find the drawer. But the new modern cars with all the computers, all the electronics in, this really isn't, you can use it, but there's kind of better ways, or easier ways, should I say. There's a few ways of doing this, like everything. I'm going to show you the way I use. Sorted. One of the ways you can do it is use an amp clamp. So if you've got something like this, an amp clamp, or another version that goes to your multimeter, something like that can kind of show you a way. Now, we're not going to use this method, we're going to use a slightly different method. We're going to use a multimeter and a big resistor. Now, we'll go into what the resistor is and everything in a second. One thing I do want to mention with this particular method, if you are using this method, just be aware, depending on what car you are using, it might take up to an hour for all the computers to turn off before you can do this test. So just turning, putting jump leads on your car, starting it up, getting the battery charged, taking it back off, and then plugging this on, not necessarily is going to give you a true reading. Depending on your car, you might have to wait at least an hour before you can do this test. Also, once you do this test, bear in mind, depending on your car, you might start losing codes and stuff. So be very, very careful before you do this. On the brand spanking new modern cars, I wouldn't use this method because you can lose a lot of codes to your computers and stuff. But for the kind of in between the older cars and the really super modern cars, in between you can use this method. Also bear in mind you might lose your radio code. So this is all things that is kind of something to be careful about. Using the amp clamp you don't have to kind of worry about these problems, but I'm just going to show you this method because I'm just going to show you it. Why not? So bear in mind all them things. It is important to know your car before you start using it because just disconnecting batteries nowadays can get you into a world of trouble. Even changing a battery in a modern car isn't as simple as just taking the two leads and putting a battery in anymore. It's all kind of, there's all things to it. But what we're going to do is, we're going to show you with a multimeter and the resistor how to test a drawer. Let's get stuck into it. Now, the reason why on modern cars these can be a bit misleading is because, like I said, there's a lot of computers running and there's going to be some sort of a battery drain on your system. There's going to be some computer, there's going to be something that's working. Even, like the older style cars had like an analog clock that's constantly ticking, that's, constantly drawing down. Most modern cars have the alarm light flashing. It's not a big draw, but again, if you left your car for a few months, it's amazing, even that little light, how much it can bring your battery down. Also, if you've got a dodgy battery, even the little draw will bring it down quicker. So that's why using a test light in a kind of a modern car, you can throw you off a bit. So what we need to do is, very simple. I've just got two battery clamps, as you can see. Kick the camera. Two battery clamps, nothing fancy. And in the middle, I've got a 1 ohm 10 watt, start again, a 1 ohm 10 watt resistor. That's all it is, very simple, nothing to it. So that's 1 ohm, 10 watts. And what this is gonna do is, we're gonna take off our battery, we're gonna plug our multimeter into this and we're gonna test for a draw. Like I said, I have seen cars, and I think the worst one I had, it was over 100 millivolts was a draw. But that was driven every day and it wasn't an issue. That person had a lot of extras wired into the car. They had reversing sensors. They had all sorts, a couple of little bits, and there was 100 milliamp, which is high, but because the car was started every day, it wasn't an issue. If that car doesn't get used for a couple of weeks, it will become an issue. But if you're using your car every day, it's not really a big deal. Now, I've tried to look online to see some sort of, try and get like a happy medium voltage draw, and it really does depend on your car. Some people say you're only allowed a 30 milliamp draw. Some people say you can have up to 50, 60 milliamp draw. You know, I've seen personally a car with a 100 milliamp draw and it wasn't an issue. So I'm going personally, just off my experience, the highest one I've ever seen, which is 100 milliamp, and there wasn't an issue. But like I said, this is a thing. If that car isn't driven every day, it will become an issue. If you wire stuff into your car, extra things, you know, bear that in mind as well. There's a few things that it'll you know, there'll always be a slight draw. So that's what I'm going to go off. 100 milliamp down, which is high, and I know I'm going to get a few comments, that's too high. I know it's high. I'm just saying this is the worst one I've seen, and there wasn't an issue with the car. So that's why I'm going off that. Personally, I think the average I've seen is maybe 30, 40, 50, in and around there. Again, it depends on your car, depends how much computers are in it, and all that sort of stuff. We've only got a 2001 Nissan Almera behind us, which doesn't have as many computers as, say, a 2015 car would have. But it's still going to have a few. We're going to have a bit of a draw. We're going to show you what to look for. And with this, you can still work on any car, really. But just like I said, be careful. Depend on your car. Don't start just disconnecting batteries and doing this, because you can lose code. You can lose everything. So kind of, you need to know your car before you work on it. I'm just showing you this because this is a simple way of doing it. And everyone can kind of make this. Most people have multimeters nowadays. It's not, you know, anything that people don't have. So yeah, so let's get cracking. Right, as I was editing the video, I noticed you couldn't see this on the video, and I don't have the car with me because I filmed this over a week ago now. You couldn't really see what I was doing. But we had this on the battery, which you could see, but you couldn't see the resistor. And at the two ends, you can see I've left some metal there of the actual resistor. All I was doing was plugging my crocodile clips onto the metal parts, the metal legs of the resistor. That's how I was measuring it. That just makes, well, so you can see essentially. It's very simple. And when I had them wrong, I just switched them around so we didn't have the minus. So that's the way I was doing it. You can't see in the video, but it's as simple as that. Sorted. So I'm just disconnecting the negative side of the battery. Now, like I said, be careful because you will, you know, you can lose stuff, but I know on this car I'm going to be okay. I'm just going to connect this to it. Very simple. So it's just connected. Very, very simple. Make sure this isn't touching anything. Now what I'm going to do, get me a multimeter and just connect each side to this. I'll turn it on. And this will give me, you can see we've got a minus. Oh, you can see that we've got a minus. So all you have to do, it's not a big deal, it still works. So if I swap the leads around, we won't have that minus now. And we've got between 16, 20, between say 17 and 25 milliamps of a draw. That is absolutely fine. There is nothing wrong with that. 100% perfect. So what I'll do is, I'll just turn something on in the car. I'm not going to start it or anything like that. I'm just going to turn something on, either a light or the radio, or something I can just quickly turn on, even the parking lights, just to see what sort of changes we have here. Actually, what I'll do is, what fuses do we have here? Make it easier for me. We do have a tail light fuse. It says tail here. So I'll just turn my lights on. Right, so I've turned my lights on, just the actual parking lights as we call them over here. And as you can see, we've gone up to 2.8 volts, nearly 3 volts, which is huge. Absolutely massive. We only had like 25 millivolts. We have now got 2.8 volts, which is huge. So if you've got something like this kind of a draw, it won't be long until this battery is flat. A couple of hours, this battery will be flat and you won't be going anywhere. So one of the easiest ways to try and find a draw, once you know you've got one, if I just hold that there, can you see that? I'm going to disconnect this fuse, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which is that one there, which is right, and see what happens. So I'm going to pull this fuse, which should turn off my lights, which it does. Now that's going to kind of settle. And as you can see, we've more or less gone back to our original reading. We're now on millivolts. I got this on an auto range, so we're now on millivolts again. But that is essentially how you do it. You're going to have to go around, pulling out each individual fuse. Well, first, I would say, just have a look, make sure nothing obvious on. Make sure your doors are actually properly closed. You haven't got a light on inside. Make sure on some cars, you will have, even when the bonnet's up, you'll have a little button and there'll be a light on the dash. So if you're testing this on a car with to say your bonnet's up, you're going to have to push the button down because you're going to be getting a reading, because that is going to be using voltage. So you need to know your car, like I said. This car doesn't have any button on to tell you your bonnet is open. So if you do, bear that in mind. Make sure all your doors are closed, make sure you've got none open, make sure all your lights are off. I've even seen cases where the little button, especially for the boot, has got broken, so the boot light stays on. It's like the fridge. Is the light on, is it off? You don't know until you open it. So one of the easiest ways to find out that is, what I'm going to do is, I've got that fuse back on. I'll just pull that fuse out and turn off the lights, because that was putting a big drawer on the system. There we go. So the easiest way to find out that is take your back seats down, make sure your boot lid is closed, put your back seats down, make sure the light isn't staying on. Once you've done the obvious things, this is where it gets tricky. Pull out each individual fuse. Most cars have on them what the fuse is for. If not, look in your handbook. Most cars have a fuse box inside inside the engine bay and also underneath the dash somewhere. So pull out each individual fuse and find out when this actually drops down to a proper level. Once you've done that, this is where the hard part begins. You now, let's say for example we had the lights, you now have to figure out what is wrong. I've seen a lot of, this says audio, I've seen a lot of audio systems, especially in the Fords. They actually, they blow up internally and they make a huge draw. So you have to disconnect the radio. Once you disconnect the radio, the draw goes down. It's internally in the radio. So finding the problem is the hardest thing. It's not going to be as easy as what I've just showed you, but at least it gives you an idea. Once you pulled out the fuse and you know what that fuse essentially controls, you can then trace that wiring, you can trace that sensor, you can trace whatever it happens to be, you can trace it to figure out where it is. Is it a short to ground? Is it, you know, if you've got a serious problem, you won't know until you kind of check it out. But it's very, very easy way of doing it. It gives you an accurate reading, very simple thing. Just a bit of wire, a resistor, a multimeter, there you go. Sorted. Like I said, know your car first. Even that with that drawer, that was getting kind of warm. That's why I turned the lights off. You don't want to leave it on for too long. Hopefully you won't have a big drawer and hopefully you'll find it kind of easy. But if you are finding your battery after a couple of days, your car won't start, you keep having to jump start it. It could be your battery, so test your battery first. If your battery's good, then you can do the drawer test. But they're kind of hand in hand. Even if you get a good battery, but you've got a big draw, it's going to go down. Once the battery goes down to a certain voltage, I don't care if it's new, you will do damage to the battery. The battery will never work 100%. So you don't want to let your battery drain too much because you'll destroy it. That's really as simple as that. It's very simple, but the fix isn't simple. The fix can be an absolute nightmare to find. You could find the fuse in a couple of seconds, but it could take you 3 or 4 hours to fix the actual problem. It's just one of them things. I've seen a lot of draws on kind of big things like the heater matrix inside, even though if it's not working properly, but there's kind of power going to it. I've seen radios give big draws. I've seen dash clocks give big draws and loads of stuff like that. This is where your diagnostic has to go further. For example, if you pull out your fuse that controls your instrument cluster and the power draw goes away, well, the next thing to do is take out your cluster clocks, put the fuse back in, disconnect the wire from the back of the clock. If your draw goes, you know you've got a problem internally in the clock. If your draw doesn't go, you know you've got a problem from the fuse to the actual clock. You've got a problem with the wiring in between somewhere. This is how you kind of have to do it. So like I said, if you pull the pull the back of the clocks out and the drawer goes, well then that's it. You fix the problem in the sense of, you know, there's an internal problem in your cluster. Whether you get it fixed, whether you get a second-hand one or a new one, that's obviously up to yourself. Same with your radio. You pull out your radio, the drawer goes down, well, no, you know you've got a problem internally in the radio. Really, it's as simple as that. Bear in mind, to do this test on a modern car, you could have to wait up to an hour before everything turns off before you can get a true reading. You'll often hear on modern cars kind of a buzzing when you turn the engine off because there's things still on and kind of buzzing. They might go off after 30 seconds, a couple of minutes, but there still might be other things that the car is doing. You know, so bear that in mind. You'll see a lot of auto dimmer switches in the car, so when you close the door, the light could stay on for a couple of minutes, but if you lock it, it will kind of automatically dim. So bear that in mind too. Don't do the test until the lights go out. You know, kind of, it's common sense. But that's how you do it. Hope it helps. Thumbs up, subscribe, the usual. Links up here, links down below. But most importantly, don't forget, get your hands dirty. See you for the next one.